Am I the idiot for disinviting my sick grandmother from my wedding? I imagine I'll likely be verbally eviscerated by the internet masses, but I do have some explanation. My grandmother is my only living grandparent, and she's my hero. When I was a kid, she beat stage 4 lung cancer, and when I had my own, less severe, diagnosis of cancer, she was there for even more than my parents. I hope people believe me when I say, this decision to exclude her from my wedding is not one made lightly. However, I genuinely think it to be for the best. My fiancé and I are getting married in about 8 months, and have been engaged for close to 3 years. We hadn't intended for such a long engagement, but it's where the dice fell. Initially, when planning the wedding, I absolutely wanted my grandmother there and sent her an invite, but about a year ago she had a massive stroke. ETA, to make this absolutely clear, everything was planned and booked before she had the stroke. She's 90 years old and the family was kind of astonished she even made it. However, she's been in really bad shape since then. On her good days she still needs a walker to get around, though oftentimes requires a wheelchair. Unfortunately, our wedding takes place in an old historical location that is not wheelchair friendly. The ceremony space is quite a walk across a field from the reception area. All in all, not very suitable for my grandmother in her current state. I tried to see if we could move the venue, but the wedding was already paid off and the contract states we can't get a refund if we choose to cancel. So moving locations, we'd be out $20,000. We're paying for the wedding ourselves and scraping together every dime we had to pay for it, so this isn't a hit we can financially bear. It broke my heart immensely coming to the realization my grandmother couldn't be there, especially worrying if she tried to push herself it could harm her health further, and she refuses to accept it. She insists she'll make it there with her walker, but she can't even get through a grocery store trip, let alone an all-day event. I suggested we have someone in front for the ceremony, video call her, or have us get married at a courthouse beforehand so she could be there for the actual marriage and still use the wedding as more of a celebration party. Hell, I would have been willing to get married in the damn parking lot. However, she's the type of stubborn and headstrong person to refuse to accept her limitations. Was practically offended I would entertain the idea of ruining my own wedding or suggest she is less than capable of being there in person, and is now very upset with me now that I've said if she refuses all of my compromises then it may be for the best she not attend. Family members are equally angry with me for crushing her hopes to see me get married and have been giving me loads of poop, even though they're well aware of her condition and agree it would be virtually impossible to have her be there. The only one on my side is my fiancé, which has me wondering if I really am the idiot for not letting her try to attend despite knowing it likely won't end well. Am I the idiot? ETA. I'll answer some frequently asked questions that I've seen so far. She does have a part-time caregiver come by her house a couple days a week to bring groceries and take her to appointments and stuff like that. However, she's kind of a small lady herself and isn't even available the day of the wedding. We've looked into hiring/renting assistants of any kind, but we've put almost all our money towards the venue, which my parents insisted on for a centralized location. They've been taking control of the wedding and I don't have the best relationship with them. But that's more than I can get into with the character limit, and it was one of the most affordable. No one in the family has yet to volunteer to help either physically the day of or financially, so we're pretty much on our own. My main concern comes from her potentially pushing herself too hard trying to get around, which has happened after the stroke and put her health at further risk because she's tried to continue living as she did before the stroke and has been hospitalized for it. Now for a few comments before the update. You're the idiot. This is dark as frick. She's an adult. Why are you not letting her make her own choices? Disinviting someone is a huge deal and is usually reserved for when someone does something particularly egregious. Comment 2. No idiots here. Have you asked the staff at your venue for ideas? They may have solved this problem before. You said that the ceremony is across a field from the reception. Maybe you could borrow a golf cart and have someone drive her. TBH, your setup doesn't sound very friendly to a lot of people. I can't imagine people in high heels, for example, wanting to walk across a field, especially if it's quite a walk. Now for the update. Hi, I wanted to give an update to my previous post. There were a lot of repeat questions since some things I couldn't explain fully due to the character limit, so hopefully I can provide some clarification. I was concerned and initially made the decision to uninvite her because she was insistent on living life just as she did before her stroke, and didn't even want a part-time caregiver until an incident at the grocery store that ended with her hospitalized. I didn't want her to be in a similar situation just for me. If she got hurt or worse as a result of her overexerting herself at my wedding, I would never forgive myself. I thought I was doing the right thing for her sake, but a lot of the comments gave me some much-needed perspective. A handful of people were convinced I was embarrassed by my grandmother's health issues, worried she would ruin the wedding, or hoped my grandmother would pass away. As my grandmother is fond of saying, even Evel Knievel couldn't make that leap. I will admit part of why I came to the decision was the result of frustration and lack of any sort of help from family. Not just for the wedding, but it feels like they've given up on her altogether. I was at my wit's end with them, didn't know what else to do, got massively stressed and overwhelmed. It was taking more of a toll than I realized. I'll likely have a serious talk with certain family members later on. We did look into hiring/renting assistants of any kind, but we've put almost all our money towards the venue, which was chosen by my dad and stepmom. They paid the down payment on our home and used that to steer the wedding in a direction they wanted, so they heavily influenced a lot of decisions. At the time it would have worked fine since everything was booked and paid before my grandmother had the stroke. She's my mom's, who isn't in the picture, mother and was never close with my dad, so my parents aren't willing to provide financial help to get her some assistance. No one from her side wants to help either, so we're on our own. As for the main update, we found a way for my grandmother to safely attend the wedding. I stated in some comments my grandmother was very active in her community, even leading right up to the stroke. One of her favorite things was reading to kids at a nearby elementary school, and I learned she'd become good friends with one of the custodians who would help her navigate the building and escort her around, a really nice guy in his 40s. I contacted him and explained the situation, and he said he would love to be her dedicated help for the day of the wedding. When he said that, the relief and excitement I felt was indescribable. Of course, I went to my grandmother and begged forgiveness, and explained the plan for the day. She was happy with the arrangement, and said while she understood I had good intentions, if I try any nonsense like that again, she'd drop dead out of spite. Thank you all for your help and judgment. Comment 1. That made me cry. Especially at the end what your grandma said, because that sounded exactly like something my mother would say. She sounds like a special lady. Comment 2. Oh, I'm so glad. My elderly grandma is also stubborn to a fault and mobility challenged, so I feel your pain. I hope everything works out. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for not giving my boss my first-class seat? Yesterday, my boss and I were flying home from a conference. We were on the same flight, but our original seats were not next to each other. I'm a frequent traveler on this airline and use their credit card, so I often get free upgrades to first class. I got upgraded on this flight and my boss did not. After the flight, when we were collecting our bags, she said she wanted to talk to me about my lack of respect for protocol. She thinks that because the company paid for my original ticket, and she is more senior than me, I should have given her the first-class seat. I think this is absolutely insane. While the company paid for my seat, it's my own personal credit card spending and frequent travel that earned me the upgraded seat. Is this some sort of corporate standard I'm not aware of? Am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. Not the idiot. If you want to go forward, you can always email HR and ask. X happened while on this trip and manager Y advised that I should have done Z. Can you point me to where I can review the protocols so I know going forward? It documents the incident without being accusatory and lets you be able to cite chapter and verse if there's a next time. Comment 2. Not the idiot, this was your upgrade, not a company upgrade. I'd keep an eye on this boss from here and document anything in case of retaliation. Now, for the update. Thanks to the many of you kind Redditors who made me realize 1. I was not the idiot in this situation, and 2. I was in a very toxic work situation. I took the advice many of you gave me and clarified the policy with HR. The company, of course, did not have this policy. I also took your advice to get out of that job quickly and am happy to say I'm starting a new job in 3 weeks. I know the person who will be my supervisor in my new job, and she is a very kind, normal person. Pretty nervous to give my notice to the toxic boss on Monday. But oh well, if she's nasty then my 2 weeks notice will just become an immediate resignation. We live in a one-party consent for recording state and plan to record the phone conversation to protect myself. Thanks to all of you for giving me the push to move on. Comment 1. Congrats on the new gig. And when you meet with her, if she asks why you're leaving, just tell her it's a general lack of respect for protocol. Around the office example. Like treating employees with a modicum of respect. Now, for the next story. Am I the idiot for forcing my daughter to share a birthday celebration with her twin brother? I have 2 kids, Paige, female 14, and Dylan, 14M. As twins, most years they've wanted to have a joint birthday celebration, but there have been a couple of years where they've decided to have separate parties with different friend groups or at different locations. They tell me a few weeks before their birthday and may which thing they want to do that year. So this year Paige told me that she and Dylan had decided they wanted to have their own parties, and she and her friends had already picked a whole theme and the activities that they wanted to do. I approved Paige's plan, and then a day or so later I asked Dylan what he wanted to do for his birthday party. At this point I learned that Dylan and Paige had not mutually decided that they were having separate celebrations this year, and me asking Dylan about it was the first he was hearing that he was expected to have his own party. His feelings were very hurt that Paige had cut him out without so much as talking to him about it. So I spoke with Paige and she admitted that she and her friends had decided on their own to exclude Dylan because they felt that a boy would wreck the activities they had planned. I told Paige that it wasn't okay for her to treat her brother that way and that the party I'd originally agreed to was now cancelled, and that I expected her and Dylan to plan a joint birthday celebration with activities that all of their friends could enjoy. Dylan is much happier with this arrangement, but Paige is angry and keeps saying that I ruined her party. I'm worried that I might have made a misstep because normally I try very hard to treat my kids as individuals and not just as a pair of twins, and I'm worried that forcing Paige to share her birthday celebration with Dylan might send the wrong message on that front. So am I the idiot? Now for a few comments before the update. You're the idiot, I think. Having a mutual party should only happen if both kids want to do it. I can understand telling Paige that it was rude of her to not talk to her brother and give him a heads up that she wanted her own party, and asking her to apologize, but forcing her to have a joint party is going too far. Comment 2. You're the idiot. The girl planned a party for herself and her friends. The boy failed to do so. Now the girl is forced to put together another party to accommodate the boy. And this is where girls learn that the world, even their mom, expects them to carry the emotional labor. Now for the update. I've had several DMs ask how this situation turned out, and if I apologized to Paige, so I figured I'd just make an update. So I talked with both Paige and Dylan over the weekend and told them that I wouldn't make them share their birthday party. I told Paige I realized that forcing her to share a birthday party with Dylan was an unfair punishment, because I knew it was more important to treat her like an individual and not like one half of a matching set, and I apologized for forgetting that and told her I wouldn't let it happen again. Paige asked if that meant that she could still have the birthday party that she and her friends had planned. I told her that I wasn't sure because I still wasn't happy with her for lying to me in the first place. Paige said that she was more upset about having to tell her friends that her party was cancelled than about having to share a party with Dylan, and that she didn't really get why I was apologizing for that instead. I asked Paige what she thought a more appropriate consequence for lying was instead of having her party cancelled, and she suggested getting grounded, so that's what we're going with. Lastly, I told Paige that since I know she and Dylan are getting older now, I'll just assume going forward that they want to have separate parties every year. Paige said that she only did this year because her friends decided they didn't want any boys. I told her that was fine, and I guessed we'd just talk about it again next year. And then I told Dylan that I was letting Paige have her all-girls party with her friends, and that I realized I shouldn't have used sharing a birthday party with him as a punishment because that wasn't fair to either one of them. Dylan said it was okay and that if he was having a solo party after all, he knew what he wanted to do for it. I also told Dylan that since he and Paige are getting older now, I'd start assuming that they want separate parties unless they tell me otherwise. Dylan said he guessed that made sense. So that's pretty much it. Dylan and Paige are each having their own party. And at some point they talked it out between themselves as far as Dylan's feelings being hurt that Paige hadn't talked to him about what she wanted to do this year. I wasn't involved in the conversation, but they've been friends again since it happened. Comment 1. I am glad it worked out, but I think you need to think about why she lied. Does she feel that you always favor Dylan?